Hey, you beautiful being. Welcome to Empowered Human with Nina Garcia. I am your host, and you are in for a very special episode because if you have been listening in, you know this is my last officially live episode for 2024. I am pausing the podcast and going to be giving you some throwback episodes moving forward so that I can focus on the book. Yes. While I have loved doing the podcast, y'all know I can only get bite-sized information out in like one story an episode. And I love that we do that, right? I love that we explore a facet of humanity and don't try to go through like a million bajillion things of a lifetime. And yet, if I can pause actually recording the podcast every week and move into focusing on the book more than I have been, I can hopefully get the entire empowered human lifestyle guide into your hands by the end of the year. We'll see. Maybe I'm being ambitious. We'll see. Publishers do have deadlines and I've got to meet them. But for now, I am still going to give you an episode. I want you to get a journal or a really good friend to dialogue with about what comes up for you in this episode. We always explore a question. I give you an answer in a nutshell. I give you a real story, some educational bits, and then I end the episode with adventure challenges. So I'm going to do that to the best of my ability in this episode. But because this is my last episode, I want to give you some other updates too before we dive in. Some updates being, if you're not already following me on Instagram, please go follow me there because I'll be giving more material there as I focus on writing the book for the empowered human life. Yes. Also, I mentioned that there are going to be some throwback episodes coming up. I am going to be dialing back and listening along with you all to episodes that we did 5 seasons ago. We're going all the way back, y'all. We're going all the way back to season 1, which means we're actually dialing into a different podcast because we used to be called Triggered. Can we play with that before we moved into Empowered Human with Nina Garcia? So you're going to be getting some throwback episodes. We are going to be listening into the same journey, seeing how we have evolved from Triggered, Can We Play With That to Empowered Human with Nina Garcia. So I will be listening along with you for the upcoming throwback episodes. And then last but not least, before we go into the question for this episode, I am still going to be doing therapy. I am still in private practice. So if you are looking to work with me, either in therapy or in therapeutic coaching, yes, whether you're going for therapy for trauma history or for coaching for working on your identity and empowerment in your present life moving forward, yes, either of those things, I will be accepting new clients because I'm freeing up a little space now that the podcast is pausing, yes. Come join me, follow me on Instagram, check us out at HoustonCreativeArtsTherapy.com. Although news update for that too, that will be shifting to DramaTherapistNina.com. Yay! I know, I'm very excited too. Okay, those are all the news updates I have for you. I wanted to make sure that you had them up front before we dive in. Are you ready? Here's the question for this episode. Why did I develop an empowered human role, lifestyle, and movement? I know it's not as universal a question as we typically do in episodes, but I think it is important before I leave the podcast on hold that I share with you from my heart to your heart, from my mind to your mind, from my spirit to your spirit about why I started Triggered, Can We Play With That, the podcast, and how we developed and moved into Empowered Human with Nina Garcia. I'm going to explore that in this episode with you. So I'm going to come back to that question of why did I develop an empowered human role and life and movement? And my answer in a nutshell is going to be initially so that I could exist without invalidating myself, and so that I could support others in allowing me to exist without invalidating me. Also, so that I could stop masking for other people's comfort, and so that I could support others to stop expecting me to mask for their comfort. Now, of course, for many of you, this is no surprise. You all have been living an empowered human life. You've been exploring different facets. And if you are new to it, I genuinely want you to start asking yourself that question right now. Are you masking for someone else's comfort? Are you merely existing and it is triggering for someone else? You don't even have to do anything but exist and it is triggering for someone else. If these things are true for you, the empowered human life may be something to explore. It really is about empowering you to not only live and own your own truth, but to do that within the systems of this world, within organizations and other families and other countries and other cities. And even, right, of course, where we are right at home, right, within our jobs and our homes and our friends' lives and things of this nature in our own community. The empowered human life is about owning your truth without invalidating yourself and also without invalidating others. And so if you're here for that, if this is your jam and your jelly, I hope that you grabbed that notebook and I hope that you're ready to dive on in with me. Because of course, you know, at this point, I am so curious. Are you ready to play? Welcome to Empowered Human, the dramatically playful podcast that invites you to heal humanity, the one within you, me, and the world at large. I'm your host, drama therapist, empowerment specialist, and not to mention empowered human, Nina Garcia, and I'm so stoked you're joining me on the journey. Every Wednesday, you are invited to explore transforming from powered to empowered with genuinely human stories of courageous existence, healing from invalidation, and truly belonging to you. So wherever you are on the spectrum, from empowerment curious to empowered human ambassador, this podcast is designed to humanize. Get ready to lean into your edge, heal your worldview, and finally belong to you. This is Empowered Human. Let's take a breath. Just inhale. Stretch it out if you need to. Exhale. Stretch it out a little more. Okay, y'all, I'm feeling lots of feelings. This is our last episode before the pause. I'm feeling excitement. I think I'm feeling more excitement now than I was the last few episodes. I was feeling a lot of trepidation. And highly avoiding recording. I noticed I don't want to stop the podcast. If I could afford to do it all, I would. But I can't, right? Time is a precious resource, and all of us would do well to remember this. Time is a precious resource. The energy that you give to something is a precious resource. You are not a constantly renewable resource, right? You can burn out. And so really taking that into consideration, right? You all know that I've been playing with pausing. It is a reality. I've had to make that choice. And at this point, I feel good about it. I'm very excited to be able to lean into the book a little bit more. And of course, that's what today's story and episode is going to be about, right? Like, how did we get from triggered, can we play with that, to empowered human with Nina Garcia? And if you're going to be listening to the throwback episodes coming up, right, you're going to hear there's a lot of progression. I go back and I listen sometimes to those episodes, and I'm going to be listening in as we move forward. And I was in a totally different space. I was a different person then, right? I had a lot of the same core values. And what I have done is enhance them and maintain them and amplify them. And I've, shifted some of my own individual culture pieces so that in the end, what I'm saying is I am an aligned individual, that I have done work to say that I am showing up as I intend to show up. And that I feel good about who I am. In fact, I feel great about who I am. But I haven't always felt this way, and I don't always feel that way. And so when we first started Triggered, Can We Play With That? I wanted to get resources into the hands of our community on how to deal with your own emotions. For those of us who are designed with really big emotions, right? We get triggered very easily. We have huge feeling responses. How do you handle that? How do you say, I have emotional sovereignty, right? Or that you are emotionally sober? And when I first started Triggered, Can We Play With That? I did not identify at that point as having a disability. Okay, I'm going to put that on the table. That is the first time I've ever said this on the podcast. I know we're in our 6th season. What does that say, right? Personal work needing to be done, but also growth that has happened and life that has changed. When I first started, it was really about empowering people to take hold of their emotions. I was blowing up over things. I was a strong woman. I was an independent woman, and sometimes to the point of my detriment. And in trying to survive, I did not realize that one of the things that I was struggling with was being differently abled. I did not realize that I was processing the world differently. I knew that I was different. I was often referred to as a child as an out of the box child. And for those of you who are out there like, I'm an out of the box kid, or I was an out of the box kid, right? Hey to you, right? I was the black sheep. I was the odd one out. And I didn't understand why as a kid. I just knew that I recognized it. I didn't fit in. I was bullied every year in elementary and middle school and then high school. That continued on into college and into my graduate years. And to this day, I still have adults that try to bully me. Oh my gosh, does that ring any bells for any of you out of there? Yes. Yes. Some people just don't grow out of that, folks. But we're not here to talk about that so much. When I first started, I did not realize that I was processing differently. And at this point, I realized that I am somewhere on an ADHD spectrum, somewhere maybe on there's so many different labels that we could put on my human experience. A lot of people will look at ADHD and they'll think, oh my goodness, it's because she's hyper and she's got lots of energy and she's always on the go and she doesn't know when to stop and she's loud and she's fast. And you know what? Sometimes these things may be true, right? However, what a lot of people don't consider about ADHD is the emotional component that comes with it and how our difference in processing the world can often lead to a struggle with interpersonal effectiveness, right? So what that basically means is we have a hard time communicating sometimes in ways that people expect because we actually see the world a little bit differently. So this was not an issue for me. I didn't think, right? I was having tons of meltdowns, all sorts of things. This was not an issue for me until I became pregnant and had a child in the middle of a very unhappy marriage, struggling with a partner who struggled with depression, among other things. It was a very difficult time. And what I discovered is that the skills that I had acquired in order to help me function successfully, they had worked until I got pregnant, right? They worked well enough. Let me put it that way. They still caused dysfunction and I still went off the rails multiple times a year. But when I became pregnant, the same skills that I had previously no longer worked. I didn't understand what was happening. I was having such a difficult time focusing. My hyperactive energy was gone. All I had was scattered energy. I had scattered thoughts, scattered feelings, scattered behaviors. Everything was scattered. And I didn't have skills to deal with that. I had tons of skills to deal with lots of energy and lots of ideas and putting lots of things out there, but I didn't have skills to deal with scattered self. And so I went through several different things. I went through therapy individually, in group. I did neurofeedback, something I would recommend you look up. I read books on, what could be happening with me on ADHD. And I had to realize when I was struggling to literally understand my clients, and let me be really clear on that. Cognitively, I understood what they were saying after the fact. But in the moment, I was so scattered, so distracted that I was having to look at their lips to focus on the words coming out of their mouths. That's how scattered and distracted I had become. I had to go to a psychiatrist and get medication because now what previously I had not really seen as a disability was absolutely a disability for me. This was disabling. I couldn't work effectively. I could not communicate effectively. I was incredibly scattered. And what am I, 5 years out now almost from this, right? And have different skills to deal with this new way of existing, still have meltdowns several times a year. I still have what I call blue episodes several times a year, right? Big feelings all the time, but I have lots of skills in how to deal with them as an individual. So I'm not projecting and putting them on other people the way that I used to when I was a kid, right? I didn't have skills then. And so I do recognize that now this is something that is occasionally disabling for me. I have to use my skills, right? And any medicines provided and other things, it changes from time to time, as one does, right? But so that I am constantly coming back to this, how do I empower myself as an entrepreneur, as a therapist, as a mother, as a woman, as a human being? How do I empower myself to work with others and be in the world at large, right? Constantly coming back to that question. But what has remained true from the beginning and to this day, right, remains true. And for many of you, I know this remains true, is that I am designed with very big feelings. I am designed that way. It's not something I choose. It's not like I'm going to be extra dramatic today. I am designed naturally that way. That's how I naturally flow. So when I am tampering that back and minimizing myself for somebody else's comfort, I am shifting the way that I'm naturally designed to express myself for someone else. And I have done that throughout my life in order to survive. And so when I first started the podcast, it really was about, hey, everyone out there who says that they're also designed with big feelings, that they have a trauma history, right? We know I've got assault in my history and abuse in my background, in my story, right? We know these things, like many of you. Oh my gosh, how do I deal with trauma, right? I had PTSD for 12 years. And at the top of that podcast, I had only recently been able to relieve myself of that diagnosis, right? I no longer met the criteria for that diagnosis. And so I share that for everyone out there who's like, I've got PTSD, or I think I might have PTSD. It is possible to embrace that personal work and no longer hold that label any longer if you want it. If you want it. We have this statement, right, in the healing world and a healer's world, and in therapy for sure, y'all, that the only way out is through. And in doing the podcast over the last several years with you all as an audience, growing with you all and learning from you all, and vice versa, I have been able to process through so much material of my own to grow, and to grow personally as well as professionally. At the same time that I was doing the podcast and getting things out there, I was also reading on books. I was learning how to be a better therapist. I specialize in trauma, and I have a personal history in it, but I have a professional training in it as well, right? And I found that as I moved forward learning about trauma in the, I think, very popular sense of the word, right? One has experienced maybe a war trauma, a abuse trauma of any kind, right? Whether in childhood or in a relationship, a car crash, right? Things of this where people think of like natural disasters as trauma. But I also realized that we were exploring identity trauma, different facets of people's humanity coming into the picture. And I know several times you've heard me say that I didn't realize I was differently abled, that I didn't realize I had a disability at the time. But I did, and I do. My disability, again, somewhere on the ADHD spectrum, I did not consider it to be a disability. I was very successful. I had lots of relationships. I was always in a romantic partnership, right? There's so many layers here that we could be exploring. But the point of my tale is to look from the outside in. I was very successful growing up. I was quick-witted. I was bright. I was talented in singing. And I was very expressive, right? I was very expressive on the stage. This to say, at the same time that I had all these things on the outside, what I was struggling with on the inside was, how do I stop fucking losing my shit? Excuse my language. I would have something that would be like a hair trigger, and then I would immediately jump to the defense. And my defense and way of living was shut it down, shut them down. And I was really good at shutting them down. And what, of course, did this do? I burned a lot of bridges. And it wasn't something that I was like, I'm going to choose to be this way. This felt very natural to me. I had to learn that I was being triggered. I had to learn that it wasn't other people or other things outside of me that were placing those feelings there. I had to learn that the trigger already existed within me. And that if I didn't want anybody else to be able to push that button, I had to process through removing the button, minimizing the button. And I don't mean minimizing as in making small, I mean actually processing and working through so that it eventually did not exist of its own accord. Not me just pretending it doesn't exist. I mean actually doing the work to say that it is smaller and not as triggerable a button. You picking up what I'm putting down? I won't go into all the details, right, of how this triggered, right, occurred. Now, I hope that there's some sort of sense in what I'm sharing with you about the pain of the intense emotions that I felt and just not having the skills. I did not have the skills to know how to deal with it. As I got older and as I trained and I became well adept at using skills, well adept at using tools, right? And then teaching other people how to use these skills. I gained skills of my own. I developed my own framework. And some of that is what you have heard here in Empowered Human with Nina Garcia, right? As we transition to that, I said, hey, I want to actually share with you the tools. And then I realized quite quickly, it's not enough. I'm driving myself crazy trying to give you all these tools in each episode. And it's like, I got to get the book out there. I got to get the book out there. So quickly, I want to share with you right here, right now, some of what I have found to be some of the most important tools as I have transitioned, what my clients say are some of the most, brightening, mind-blowing things that they have learned here. I want to give you them at base and see what you can take with them. And then I'm going to try to give you some adventure challenges from this. Yes. So here we go. Get out your journals, get out your friends. Here it is. One of the first things that we started with is I wanted to be an individual who said, I can own my truth everywhere I go without invalidating myself, without invalidating other people. I want to be able to do that. I want to stop masking for other people's comfort. I want to be able to do that. And the first thing I realized is that I had to be able to do it as an individual. So as an individual, I was like, well, I want to self-actualize. And I imagined that we had the self-actualization pyramid. I had read this somewhere, the difference between self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-realization, and self-actualization. And I want you to imagine that they are going up the pyramid as I share that with you. Again, the base of the pyramid, the widest part of the pyramid would be self-awareness. This is you being able to say, snap, crackle, pop, I am now aware that I am not happy with something. I am now aware that I am feeling in fill in the blank, right, about this thing. Your awareness in being able to now say, I know that I am feeling this. This is mine. This isn't something I know this. I'm now aware of this about myself, right? Is the beginning of you being able to now say, now I have a choice if I want to choose to change it. So many of us live a life and we're not happy with it. And the reality is we're also not aware of why we're not happy with it. We're not aware of what's causing the unhappiness. We just know we're not happy, right? Or we think this is how life is. And you know what? In some cases, maybe that is how life is. But I am willing to bet, my friend, based on personal and professional experience, that life ain't always that way. That you actually have more choice than you may know and realize. And so I want you to tap into that. I want you to dial into that and believe with me for a second that you can self-actualize the individual self that you want and the life that you want. But it starts with self-awareness. So once you are aware of something, now you have a choice. You say, snap, now I know I've got a choice. I've got to choose. Am I going to keep living this way, or am I going to make a move to change my life? Which move you going to make, friend? Which move are you going to make? Self-awareness comes, and then you say, I want knowledge on this, right? If you choose to ask yourself what it is you want to do about this thing you're now aware of, now you are saying, I know that I want to change this. Here's what I want to do about it. I know that I want to change this. Here's what I want to do about it. Moves you on up from self-knowledge, knowing what you want to do about what you're aware of, to self-realization. Now I know what it is I want to do. Here's how I can make it happen. Here's how I realize this in my life. Here's how I make it consistent and maintain it and say that I am a person who does this now because it is more beneficial to me. And if it is more beneficial to me as a human being, then it should be rippling out and affecting others in a beneficial way. So again, that's self-actualization pyramid, and I will put a link to it in the show notes for those of you who want that visualization. Self-actualization pyramid: self-awareness, self-knowledge, self-realization, self-actualization. I cannot tell you how many clients I have say, oh my gosh, Nina, it finally clicked for me when you said that. How much more power I have to make a change, but I have to acknowledge and be aware first that something is not working for me, that something is not benefiting me, and that I can change it if I want to. So that self-actualization pyramid, that is one of the tools that I want to give you. Draw it in your notebook if you need to. We'll also put a link in the show notes. I'm going to get a drink of water right now, and then I'm going to go into the next piece. Get ready. Okay. Next on our list is alignment. Hey, alignment. A lot of people are talking about like, are you aligned? Are you aligned? It's not hocus pocus, friends. Alignment, in the way that we think about it in the empowered human world, is your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors being aligned. The thought that you have should be supported by the feeling that you have, should be supported by the behaviors that you are engaging in. If you have all three, then you are mostly aligned. And you could literally write your own thought, feeling, and behavior down right now for something. And you could say, am I mostly aligned in this? Your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors is going to tell you. Okay. All three, let's say you got them in line. Guess what? You're mostly aligned. Let's say you have two that are supporting each other, but one that's a little out there or maybe even not supporting the others. That would mean that you are in partial alignment. Okay. Let's say you only have one thing that you're like, that's the thing I want. That's the one thing that I for sure want. But the other two are not really supporting that. Oh, Nina, how do I get them to do that? You are now least aligned. You are the least aligned that you could be. We've got some work to do from here, right? But you now being aware of this means now you can know what needs to happen, and then you can choose to realize. You see what I just did there? Brought in the self-actualization pyramid to alignment. Oh yeah. Okay. 1 out of 3, right? You're working with the least alignment. Now let's say that you have 3 things that are in alignment in the worst possible way. You say, Nina, they're definitely alignment, but they are not benefiting me. Then you are misaligned. We go from mostly aligned, partially aligned, least aligned to misaligned. Misalignment absolutely happens for us. We're so human when all 3 things are supporting each other in a negative or unhealthy or not beneficial direction. Okay? Work has got to be done. But now that you have an awareness of it, and I said it again, you can pause this episode here, write that down, 1 line for each. Make sure that the thought is about the same feeling, is about the same behavior, right? And once you've got that, you'll know, am I mostly, partially, least, or misaligned? Do that work for yourself. You deserve that, right? It's a huge part of the empowered human lifestyle for us to consistently be asking myself, am I in alignment right now? Because I guarantee you, if you find yourself saying, I feel off, I feel like not myself, I feel like things aren't going my way, guess what I'm going to say? Can you please check out your alignment? Because I bet something's off. Yeah, I bet something's off. This will give you the opportunity to make a change if you choose it. Yeah, if you choose it. So I'm going to keep going from there. Pause the episode here if you need to. But what we then came to is, after alignment, there are some core principles here, right? And I thought, well, if we're really trying to align and it's really about myself, how can I say that I am really following an empowered human life in my choices, in my thoughts, in my feelings, in my behaviors? What actually makes them aligned? What actually makes them empowered? Little e empowerment is for individuals. Big E empowerment is for individuals in systems. Individuals who understand we don't exist in a vacuum, that there are in fact multiple layers affecting us and that we affect. And we usually divide that up by saying self, other, and the world at large. Now, I don't want to get you bogged down in anything yet, right? You can get the book later. But for right now, there are 3 pillars that we discovered in this process up to this point. And it is, are you thinking, feeling, and behaving in ways that are courageous? ways that are courageous, ways that invite you to lean in. I want you to imagine that that's what courage is. Courage is the ability to lean into something that is uncomfortable, or to maintain your space and truth in a space that is uncomfortable. Yeah. So that you can, again, the only way out is through, to make it through. There's growth in that space if you're willing to stay in that space, so long as it's beneficial for you and those around you, right? Doesn't always feel that way at first, but that's what courage is, right? The ability to lean in and stand your ground, even in uncomfortable spaces. And so courage is one of the main pillars that we find is, can you do that? Now, here's the thing is, you can absolutely be a courageous, badass, lean in individual and be super harmful. You can be super harmful. And so when we say choose courage over cowardice, this also brings us to the next pillar, which is choosing healing over harming. Healing being thinking, feeling, and behaving in ways that say, I am allowed to show up and be valid, and you are allowed to show up and be valid. Even if we're different, that we are valid as human beings, that our lived experiences are valid, that I am going to choose not to harm you because I know that harm begets harm, that I'm going to choose healing ways of engaging with you. And if I cannot choose healing ways of engaging with you, I may have to disengage with you because I am intentionally showing up to choose healing over harming. This is the empowered human way. And so here we realize, right, you can be courageous and badass, and you can say, you know what, I'm showing up and I am healing. And you know what, maybe I even identify as healed. I've worked through my trauma and my drama. I'm courageous, Nina. I'm healed. Boom, I'm done. And then I was like, oh, snap. Actually, we find that there is one more thing. Yes, that it is not just about the courage to be up and show up as you are, that it is not just about the willingness to choose healing over harming, but it is also about the intentionality to choose to belong and to engage in ways that promote belonging. Belonging over rejecting. It is easy to exclude something that is different than you. It takes courage and your own personal healing work to be able to say, I also want to belong in the world, even in a world that does not accept me. I want to and deserve to belong, and I want to support others in choosing belonging over rejection. It takes courage, healing, and belonging, it turns out, to show up as an empowered human. And so even if that's your takeaway from this episode, that would be one of the challenges that you can take, is how do you show up with more courage? You lean in instead of avoidance, right? Leaning back into that cowardice. How do you choose healing instead of harming, which is so easy to do sometimes, especially when we have a habit of doing it, maybe for a long time, maybe because it's helped you survive. And then how do you choose belonging over rejecting? How do you really say, I do deserve to show up, and also you deserve to show up? It's not some happy-go-lucky fantasy, right? That like everybody can exist in the same room at the same time, right? That's not what we're saying in the empowered human world. What we're saying is that you can choose courage, healing, and belonging. And you know what? When you can't, it may be better that you choose to remove yourself from a situation or a relationship, an organization, a community, if you do not yet know how to show up in an empowered way, in a way that gives you power and also gives other power. You picking up what I'm putting down? There's so much nuance to this. There's so much context that is left out, because of course there are times when you will have to protect yourself, have to do things. But here we're talking about the empowered human life, not a powered human life. Yeah. I want you to do more than survive. I want you to thrive. And a big part of me moving from triggered, can we play with that, to empowered human with Nina Garcia was realizing that I was moving from surviving to thriving in ways that I did not even realize I could. But how did I get there, folks, right? Trusting the process, write that down, trust the process, and continuing to move through. The only way out is through. Okay. Last but not least, I know there's so many more tools that I could give you, and people who've actually been through the journey might be like, no, you didn't tell them about, fill in the blank with their favorite tool. But I would be a terrible podcast host if I didn't tell you about the empowerment spectrum, us being empowered human, right? One of the biggest things I realized on the personal and professional journey toward healing trauma, toward healing identity trauma, right? Or invalidation trauma, as we call it. One of the biggest things that I realized was how important it is to recognize power dynamics in a space. And the empowerment spectrum helps us do that. The empowerment spectrum offers you 5 different power dynamics. Right now, it's not to say that there aren't more, but these are the power dynamics that we work with. We find that they show up more often than not. Yeah. Very common power dynamics. And so from that spectrum, right, from left to right, or least empowered to most empowered, right, we have disempowered. Disempowered power dynamic invalidates the self and it invalidates others. Okay. We have an entire episode on that. I'm going to, have my assistant put in all the links that we possibly can in the show notes to this one so that you can explore the empowered human world while I'm getting the book ready for you. And then that will be nice and orderly laid out. Yes. But it starts with disempowered. Okay. Again, invalidates self, invalidates other. Then we move on over to codependent. A codependent power dynamic is willing to invalidate the self in order to validate the truths of the other. Okay, arrow down for the self, arrow up for other. See where I'm going here? We move on to an avoidant power dynamic. Avoidant power dynamics, these individuals don't really like to acknowledge the discomfort or the uncomfortable things that are happening, okay? Instead, they'd rather completely negate a story or say, I wasn't here, I don't want to deal with it, right? They avoid. Imagine 2 slashes. This is like a slash through the self, a slash through others. It's very difficult to work with an avoidant power dynamic, right? Not impossible, you beautiful human being. It's not impossible, okay? It just takes a little courage. And that, it turns out, is not magic, it's skill-based. Courage, healing, and belonging are all skill-based. You can learn them. I have learned them, my clients learn them, and you can learn them too. But I'm going to keep going, okay? After avoidant, we have our 4th one here, arrow up for the self, arrow down for other, a powered dynamic. Powered dynamic people are willing to validate the truths of the self, and they're willing to minimize, misrepresent, or outright reject the other, right? They're willing to invalidate the other in some way, shape, or form. So that's your power dynamic. We move one on over 5. The most empowered you could be is, of course, an empowered, capital E, empowered dynamic. In this dynamic, you validate the truths of yourself at the same time that you validate the truths of others. You recognize that there is a difference in the lived experience here. It doesn't mean that somebody is worse or better. It means that this person, or persons in this case, have had particular lived experiences that have led them to where they are in this moment. That is important when we're talking about the empowered human life, y'all. Empowered human life validates multiple truths. Why? Because there are as many ways to human as there are humans. How could we ever expect to limit that? And it doesn't mean that we can't inspire, that we can't lift up, that we can't offer. We can do all of these things. But there are factually as many ways to human as there are human beings, it turns out. So why not think about self-actualizing and moving up the pyramid intentionally with awareness and knowledge and realization so you can be that actual individual you want to be? And why not work on your own alignment, making sure that your thoughts, feelings, and behaviors are mostly aligned? And if they're partially aligned or least aligned or misaligned, doing some work to get them as close to mostly aligned as you possibly can. And you know what? You reach out for support when you're struggling, because as you are human, I am human too. We need support sometimes. We need skills. And then you think about courage, healing, and belonging. And you take that and you say, how can I be more courageous, more healing, more belonging toward myself and also toward others? And then finally, you look at the empowerment spectrum and you say, where am I on that empowerment spectrum? Maybe you take the quiz on the Instagram profile, right? And you see, am I struggling with disempowerment, avoidance, codependence, power dynamic, or am I empowered here? And you really, if you go through that quiz, don't let me catch you thinking about what you'd like to be. I want you to think about real moments before you answer those questions, real moments in which you have engaged in that way. Oftentimes we will put what we wish we were, but not what we actually are. Meet yourself where you are. Meet yourself where you are, because that is where the work can be done. That is where we get aware. Yeah? Yeah. So I hope that this has been helpful, right? We set out to answer this question of why did I develop an empowered human role, a lifestyle, a movement? Because I wanted to exist without being expected to mask, to cover up, to hide for somebody else's comfort. And because I wanted to be able to support others in not being triggered, so triggered that they expect people to minimize themselves, that they expect people to be okay with misrepresentation or rejection. I don't want that world. I am not interested in maintaining that world. I am very interested in disrupting minimization, misrepresentation, and outright rejection of humanity. I am very interested in working with people from little e empowered to big E, working in the systems that we work in, that we live in, that we love in, to figure out how they can show up as their most vibrant self. When you think about why you would take on the empowered human role, a lifestyle, the movement, right? I want you to put yourself in the shoes of any of the stories that we've been through together, any of the moments that we've had, whether it's in this episode or a previous episode, and even with the tools that I've given you here in this episode, the self-actualization pyramid, alignment, courage, healing, belonging as 3 core pillars in the empowerment spectrum. Just with those alone, what could you do to change your world this upcoming week? Now, here's the thing. I don't want you to go from 0 to 100, right? We can't jump from 1 to 5. We can only jump from 1 to 2, and then 3, and then 4, and then 5. But you've got to meet yourself at 1. So meet yourself there. I'm going to try to give you adventure challenges because I know I've given you so many tools. I don't want to overwhelm you. Pick what works for you. Throw away what doesn't, and put on a shelf what might work for later. You ready for your adventure challenges? Here we go. Typically, for your adventure challenges, I go through and I give you a self-awareness one and a self-knowledge and a self-realization. I'm going to switch it up this time. I'm going to switch it up because this episode didn't have a very particular story or one tool. It had many, right? It had many. And so my adventure challenge to you between this week and the next episode, which will be a throwback episode, is this. If you're not following me on Instagram, you can go to Instagram. You don't need to follow me for this next part. Here's the adventure challenge. In the link of my Instagram profile, you will find a little tab that says, Ask Me Anything. You can click that and ask me anything, and I will answer it. That app gives me 1 minute to be able to answer your question, so it will be in a nutshell. But if you are looking for a free question and answer sesh, that may be the space to go. So if you have something that's on your mind or in your heart from this episode or from something relevant, right? Head over to the Instagram, Ask Me Anything. That might be your adventure challenge. Just be aware, know that you want to ask a question, and realize it. Actually ask the question. That would also be you practicing courage. My hat is off to you, yeah? Maybe that's not the space for you. Maybe you say, no, you know what, Nina, I'm really working with more self-awareness. I want to explore some more. And I know this about myself, but I'm not really sure how I want to realize that. Head over to YouTube, the Drama Therapist Nina channel. I will be putting out a lot more stuff on Instagram, and everything that's on Instagram will be on YouTube. Okay. So that's the good thing to know. If that's your adventure challenge, go for it. If you are out there saying, Nina, I want to work with you, I need more support, whether it's therapy, one-on-one, because we're going to go through your trauma history, we're going to help you heal so you can feel empowered, fantastic. or whether it's therapeutic coaching, you're looking for more of that capital E empowerment, you've done some therapy and now you're looking to move forward, stop masking for other people's comfort and really show up as your most vibrant self everywhere you go, then you're going to hit me up for that empowered human life. Yeah. Either one of those, if that's your adventure challenge, reach out to me. Yes, you can reach out to me directly. Yes. So from here, reach out to me directly right here, whether it's commenting on this, hitting me up on Instagram, email. You can even message me directly. I hope I give you the right number. 281-713-5165 is our main line. Send me that. I'll make sure I get it and we will respond to you and we'll get you some resources and what you need. Yes? Last but not least, please continue to listen in if it serves you. I am going to be writing the book and I'm going to be listening to the episodes that are throwback episodes that we are going to be putting out there. It was another time of my life as I was growing, and it will throw back all the way up to present day. And then hopefully I will be back with you here before you know it. Please continue to listen, and if it serves, share the episodes if it's helpful so that this podcast stays relevant while I'm away. And if something does or doesn't work for you, let me know. I want to know. I'm super growth oriented. Y'all know that's a big part of the empowered human life, is constantly trying to realign. I'm big on it. And while I am going to write the book, and while I am very excited about that process, I will miss you. I will miss talking to you every week, and I will miss hearing from you every week. So don't be a stranger. Know that I am out there. I'm working. I'm doing the good work, personal work and professional work. And know that my heart is with you in your own journey, wherever that may be. Of course, I never know the context of your situation, and you know some of mine, but you won't know all of it ever. And I still, from my heart and spirit and mind to you, say thank you, thank you, thank you. That's what I planned for you today, folks. Thanks for sticking with me and exploring the empowered human role and life and movement. And I hope that you'll join me as we move forward. Thanks, and bye for now. Thank you so much for being willing to explore healing your humanity on Empowered Human. I hope you found at least one new way to transform your worldview from powered to empowered. If you took something from the show, please take a moment of your time and subscribe to Empowered Human. And if it really nourished you, leave us a review. Your feedback helps me understand what our community needs. Not to mention, it helps others discover the empowered human life. So keep this last bit in mind. All the visual goodies come with me on Instagram at Drama Therapist Nina. Stay up to date there on upcoming episodes, behind the scenes goodness, and reels dropping knowledge. Thank you again for being part of the empowered human community. Until next time, stay curious.